Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. So, as part of Family Connect's Self-Directed Support Month, we have got some brilliant people with us today to talk about everything SDS. So, I think you all know who I am, but just in case, my name's Lauren and I run the National Self-Directed Support Project with Enable Scotland. And I am joined by Hope Murray, who lives in Fife and is a young person going through the self-directed support process. And we are really, really pleased that we're joined by Siobhan Ferry and Nolene McCormick. Guys, Siobhan and Nolene, could I hand over to you just to introduce yourself? You will tell it much better than me, and I'll probably get your titles confused and mixed up and all of that. So can I hand over to you just to tell us a wee bit about who you are and what you do? Siobhan, I don't know if you want to go first.
Okay, thanks. I'm not quite sure about the introduction about being brilliant, Lauren. That's you maybe stretching it a little bit there. But yeah, so my name's Siobhan Ferry. I'm the service manager for learning disability within East Renfrewshire Health and Social Care Partnership. So that means that I've got responsibility for the learning disability community team and our community pathways team, which is the team that provides opportunities for people, a whole range of different activities and resources and projects that are aligned to that. I'm also the strategic lead for transitions. So for that's for young people with service or care needs who are moving through the system, because that can be a really challenging and difficult time as well. So that kind of sits under my remit.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Siobhan. And Nolene, could you just tell us who you are and a wee bit about what you do?
Hi, I will do. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm Nolene McCormick and I am quite new to East Renfrewshire Health and Social Care Partnership, and my role is the Self-Direct Support Implementation Manager, which really just means all things self-direct support, making sure that everything about our self-direct support delivery and how that works for people runs as well as it can, which means we're always listening to good feedback about how we can make things better, and also just improving in the really good stuff that we already do. So that's really my role. Prior to that, I was in the SDS team within Social Work Scotland, and before that worked in the SDS Forum, which is an independent organisation within East Renfrewshire as well. So yeah, that's my role, and hope to be able to answer some questions today.
Lots and lots of experience, and yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. And Hope, as I said, I just thought it would be better to hear from a young person going through this process rather than just boring old me asking these questions. So Hope, thank you for joining us. Hope, do you want to tell us just a wee bit about you, where you're from, how old are you, and your experience so far of self-directed support?
Okay, so I'm Hope. I am from Dunfermline in Fife. I'm 26, even though I look about 16, which has its advantages sometimes.
That's a good thing.
I can get a kid's meal because I have a kid's appetite at the minute. So my experience of self-directed support at the moment is, so I initially contacted the council, as you do, because that's who's meant to deal with it, social work, and asked for an assessment. So we found Enable, and then we found Gail. And we're now rewriting my assessment, and then I'm going to take it back to the social work. So so I have quite complex health issues. So I have, so I'm deafblind, and I also have something called hydrocephalus, which kind of has the learning difficulties or disabilities, kind of what label you want to put on it, because I'm waiting on an autism kind of diagnosis. I'm going through that as well. I've already got ADHD, I've got a bit pick and mix. But my main problem that's caused my sight loss and my hearing loss is I have hydrocephalus. So normally when a child has that, anybody that's watching this as a child that has it, you'll know that they'll get a shunt, and that's kind of the end of it in terms of that drains the excess fluid away, and they kind of get on with their life unless you shunt blocks of that. So I know it's not like how to put it and they put it off the cuff. It's not necessarily straightforward, but it's more straightforward than my care's been. I didn't get that. They just said we're just going to leave it to wait, do some watchful waiting. And this was when I was 6 weeks old. So I've basically lived with it for 25 years, and it's now decided to decompensate, which means it's basically not draining anymore.
So
yes,
a huge,
bit of a ride.
Yeah, a lot. Bless you, Hope. A lot going on, a lot,
So
which is...
I've gone from quite so I didn't really get any support of that at school, but I learned to drive and everything, so I've gone from quite how to put it, functional person, was independent, like went to uni on my own, to being really quite reliant on my parents and that, so
yeah.
kind of falling through all the gaps, didn't have any transition from like a paediatrician or that, and then
well, it sounds like self-directed support is exactly what you need, and it can, you know, I know you're just right at the start of the process, but it really can make such a difference to people's lives, Hope. So but I know you've got some questions for our lovely ladies that are with us today, so do you want to give this a bash and give your interviewing skills a go?
I will do. Is it we're starting at one, or we're starting at whatever?
Start wherever you like, Hope.
Okay. We are here to talk about SDS for anyone who is watching and doesn't know what is SDS.
That probably sounds quite silly because we know what it is, but the amount of people that we actually know
about it until you Google it.
Exactly. So I think there are still a lot of people out there that don't know about it. So yeah, that's probably a really important question.
Probably let Nolene answer that one. I think she'll be able to do so very concisely, I think.
I'll try my best. I know, and do you know, it's funnily enough, obviously, you know, we now obviously sitting in this panel, we know exactly what self-direct support is, but it's never a straightforward, I suppose, thing to explain all the time. So I'll do my best to explain it as well as I can. But so self-direct support, I suppose, in one sentence, is it's the way that all social care is delivered in Scotland, and it follows sort of three main principles. And it is a human rights based sort of legislation and how we offer that. But there are three main principles, and I think maybe if I just talk through them, sometimes that kind of helps to just give a wee bit of context around what self-direct support is. So first of all, it's about involvement. So the individual kind of being assessed. So for this example, yourself, Hope, it's about you have as much or as little involvement, which I think is equally important in the assessment as you want. And I think that's something you know that we have to highlight. It's about as much or as little, because some people don't want as much as involvement in their assessment, and some people want an awful lot. And either way is okay. It's just as long as you know that you have that option. Everybody is entitled to full support for making decisions within their support planning and choices around self-direct support. And everybody, obviously, we know requires different levels of support. And so it's the responsibility of the health and social care partnerships or local authorities to make sure that an individual has got as much support as they require to kind of go through the process of self-direct support. Right from the beginning, from finding out what it is, all the way through their assessment, their support planning, and right through to the decision they make around the support that they might need in order to meet their outcomes that have been agreed. And another really key principle around self-direct support is collaboration, so working together. So local authority will always work with the person that's been assessed, again yourself, Hope, in this instance, to find the right type of support for you. And the collaboration will be with local community resources as well, so making sure that they have good relationships, good partnerships with all community resources that are available and providers of support. And that includes looking at supports around personal assistant employment and all of that stuff. So anything at all that offers the support that it helps to improve outcomes and meet outcomes that have been assessed as well. And I'm happy to go on and maybe just brief over the four options, which we're probably again quite familiar with.
Yeah, my next question was actually going to be, how do people access it? Where do they start? And then the other one is, do you think it's a simple process? And in your opinion, do you think it could be simpler? So it's kind of, basically what you're going to explain.
Okay, well, if he's okay, I'll go through the four options and then maybe stop and we can reflect on that and maybe want to go on your next questions, Lauren. I'll let you sort of take position around that as well.
So that's perfect. The four options is something I think that people are again not aware of. Yeah, I think it's just about the awareness, isn't it?
I think sometimes the social workers don't know about it. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there are 4 options of self-direct support, and as I said, that it's important that people do have early information around the 4 options, but also they can have to come back and refocus that around after their assessment, because that's when you really want to be thinking about what option is right for you, because it's really hard to know that very early on, actually, in part of this process. But the 4 options, so you have the option of taking a direct payment, which is taking the budget that's been agreed, and you get that into your account or your carer's account, or somebody that is going to hold the budget for you, a responsible person that will hold the budget for you. And then you're able to use that budget to just meet your outcomes that have been identified with you and your social worker as part of that sort of collaboration and work together process. The second option of self-direct support is that you can use the budget to meet the outcomes, again, just the exact same way as you've identified within your assessment, but it's managed, the budget's managed by a sort of third party. So that'll be like a brokerage service, a care provider, or the local authority. So you still have full choice and control on how you're going to use the budget. However, you'll not take the responsibility of managing the budget itself. The third option is, again, the exact same process follows to begin with, which is you'll use the budget to meet outcomes that are being identified with you and your social worker, but it's managed fully by the local authority within option 3. But you still have choice. However, as I said, that's an option where you have less choice and control, probably less control than choice, I think would be fair to say, less control of the budget, but the same amount of choice, because again, if you remember, everything's always done with you and your social worker as well, to make sure that the agreed outcomes are going to do what they need to do. And then the last option is, again, the exact same process. You have your budget there to be managed to meet the outcomes that have been agreed, but you can use a mix of the options that I've just went through. So you can mix it up a wee bit. You might have some of the budget in your account as a direct payment, and you might use that a bit more flexibly, and you might have the other half of your budget might be sitting with the local authority, who will then maybe pay a care provider that you've chosen on your behalf. That's a very sort of probably straightforward example of option 4, but I think to understand option 4, it's always better to just give a wee bit of an example, because it just helps to kind of understand it, because there's a lot of options. And you can change your options as well. You can speak to your social worker about changing your options, and they will have a discussion with you about why you would want to change them, how is it going to benefit, and it's quite a straightforward process. So yeah, that's the 4 options. I'll stop there just now and see where you want to go.
Thank you, Nolly. I was just going to go back to Hope. You briefly said there that your next question was, do you think it's a simple process for people? I think particularly maybe thinking about people with disabilities, with a learning disability.
I say it, isn't it? It's kind of double-edged sword, because so even Gail gave me the easy read version, and it actually did help me, to be fair. And that to show you, I was actually talking to like both parents about it, and I was like, I have a degree, like, so I have got some like brain about me. I'm struggling to understand bits of it. You know what I mean? I'm like, you need a degree to understand it. But I think it could be simpler in terms of there needs to be more. I might, with the experience of kind of Fife, there needs to be more agency, like interrelation, because nobody talks to each other, and that's part of the problem. So that would make it simpler. That's the bit that's difficult. I would say the actual process itself, provided you have a helpful social worker, is straightforward.
I think as well, I think we're all quite guilty of work in this. Siobhan, Nolene, I don't know if you agree, we work in this, so we think it's fairly straightforward, and it makes sense to me, it makes sense to you. But what do you guys think? Do you think it could be simpler? Is there I don't know, do we have the answers? Is there a way to make the process simpler for people?
I think it probably all comes down to how we're communicating. And I think you need to understand where somebody's at. So oftentimes if somebody's, contacting the Health and Social Care Partnership, they might be doing that for the very first time. So they're stepping into the unknown, if you like. And people don't tend to be coming to the HSCP unless they've got some kind of difficulty. So that means they're already under pressure, there's a bit of stress going on. And when we're operating like that, we're not necessarily absorbing or in a position to be able to absorb lots of complex information. So I think that's really the skill of the care manager and the network of people round about, if you're using a support service to help you around SDS, just to take it at the pace of the individual, to make sure to keep checking in. Do you understand what's going on? Because it can be very easy to get sidetracked, to get, to go down one road and actually then you think, I haven't actually understood where we're going with this. So I think it can become overly complicated, but I think that's probably down to maybe not just communicating as well as we could or should.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say as well that sometimes, as you said, so if people are coming to you guys or to us in crisis, sometimes the most simplest, the most simple information can be so overwhelming. So I think that's sometimes what we forget is, I'll send out some information or I'll have a chat with people and they'll come back to me maybe a week later and say, can you tell me that again? Because I just didn't, and I think we probably are all a wee bit guilty of thinking, well, this is fairly straightforward, but when you've got lots going on, it's
yeah, I was going to say that because I like a lot of the service users, like myself. So here's an example. The amount of information and paperwork we deal with. So we have a whole Google Drive of just my medical information.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got to think about it. So even before you give them the SDS information, a lot of them are already dealing and processing all this information.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say positive about how Enable's helped me is Gail does it at my pace. So basically the social worker, it was like, come on, let's get it done. Whereas obviously I'm basically rewriting it, Gail's helping us and putting bits in, but it's like we're taking it at my pace.
Yeah.
I can't do it in one big go. We're doing it in bite sizes every couple of weeks.
And that's so important, because I was going to say that's how that works for you, and equally some people hope just want it done. Like I know I used to work in social work, and I know that some people just want you in, they don't want you to come again. They want
they're like rubber stamp, go away.
That's right. I think it's individual to the person, and I think Nolene made a really key point when she was talking about the 4 options, and was saying that's something that you'll probably revisit towards the end of the assessment process, and that's absolutely right, because if you think, if you think about trying to communicate that information to somebody at the earliest stage, that just might not be appropriate.
They're just going to be like, oh, and shut down, basically.
Are not going to understand, and hope you're absolutely right. It should be at the pace of the individual, whatever is right for you. That's what we should be aiming towards achieving, really.
Definitely.
I think as well, just following on from that, and hopefully covering some of what you've brought up there, because it is really important. And obviously we know that the statutory guidance was updated in November 2022, and that brought quite a lot of kind of updates and reflection on what people didn't think was working well about self-direct support. And local authorities, I mean, if you think that was November, we're in May just now, so local authorities are still working through some of the improvement, and that's part of what my role is about. And I think what you said, Hope, about taking things at your own pace, that's really important, and some of that's been brought in to really highlight in the legislation as well. So that's about identifying those trust-based relationships and good conversations between like yourself and the social worker.
And then it means that they're less likely to have to kind of revisit the person's kind of, how to put it, like their support plan, you know what I mean? Because it's been done right the first time.
That's right. And again, like the 4 options, you have to revisit those conversations again and again right throughout the process of assessment, because things do change, and I think there's always room for improvement. We're dealing with people because things are ever changing, and they should be as well. It is a personalised process as well, which I think is what makes it quite complex. Quite clear, but the hard work should and does in many cases pay off in the end, because it is personalised and it is to fit an individual's needs and not a whole system approach. That's hopefully what we're trying to reflect to local authorities. I know we certainly are in East Gen at the moment with our new framework, which is a universal approach rather than eligibility. It is about universal approach to things and how we can meet people's needs through a variety of different ways and not just through a budget as well. So it's really important that we focus on some of that stuff with self-direct support as well.
Nolene, you just brought us. You do this beautifully. You just bring us
Answered
on
about
to
a question to ask you.
would you? I was just wondering, what would you? I think it's question number 4 is exactly what Nolene had just started to touch on.
Yeah,
About
no,
I think
yeah,
we've got
yeah,
lots of people. I think essentially what we're saying is we generally think of SDS as a budget, and
yeah,
it's those people that need that kind of wraparound support package.
yeah,
But actually, SDS is not just a budget, is it? And
yeah,
it's a bit more than that. So if people aren't eligible,
yeah.
Jolene, Siobhan, if they're not eligible for what we class as
Like
a sort of
care, yeah,
yeah, is there other support out there for people? Because I know that a lot of the people that contact us, they are very, very independent. They live brilliant lives. They don't particularly qualify for that kind of care package, type support, but they need a wee bit of support just to live a kind of full
yeah.
life.
And it
Is
saves
that
the money in the long run, and that's the bit that sometimes is not get understood, I think. Yeah.
yeah? Is there support? So is there
So, yeah, so I suppose I can really only speak with any kind of authority about East Renfrewshire and about our approach here. And you're absolutely right. For some individuals, they don't need the support from the HSCP, but they do need something. So we would refer them to talking points. So this is our community resources. So it's a collaborative between, I think there's about 80 plus organisations who sort of sit under that umbrella.
Yeah.
And they get referrals in constantly, and it could be for anything at all. It could be somebody who's feeling a bit isolated, looking for a group, or kind of, I don't want to say lower level support, because that doesn't quite capture it, because actually that wee bit of support could absolutely be the lifeline
More
for
holistic.
somebody.
Probably what you're thinking,
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a whole range of resources, sort of community initiatives within East Renfrewshire that we're able to tap into and refer people on to. So we would like to think that people are not getting left with nothing at all, and that's very accessible as well. We've also, so for example, we grant fund a few organisations to help sustain people in the community around maybe developing networks of support, things like that, so people that maybe struggle in social situations and don't have a big family network, don't have a big friends network, things like that. So, and these, they might seem like really small things, but they're
so important.
They are very important.
Yeah.
I suppose for us, we're really, really keen to promote people to be as independent as they possibly can, so that they don't have to come to the HSCP. And those who are coming to the HSCP, there's a level of need there that we're able to respond to. So we probably got a really good setup within East Renfrewshire, but and I know that's pretty much mirrored across a lot of the country. That there's an expectation there that there's going to be collaboration.
Yeah. So I think again we're all a wee bit guilty of, we hear SDS and we think a budget, and we think there's a big budget and it's somebody that requires, I don't know, a huge support package or 24-hour care or something like that. And actually, as you say, Siobhan, it could be it could be an hour a week for somebody to just go out and get some social time or some help with some bills, or but those things could really make a huge difference to people. So
no, absolutely. Or it could be a kind of a one-off thing. And it was interesting earlier on, Hope, when you were saying that you were previously driving, because I had reviewed something recently and the request was for a budget for transport costs for this individual, and I won't go into the details of it, but when I looked at it, I thought there's actually nothing to prevent this individual from learning to drive. And it would be much, much longer term. For so many reasons, it would be so much better to invest in that for the individual, to support them around that, rather than committing to providing a budget for transport forevermore. And that's what happens.
As simple as straightforward as pointing them towards. So like when I was learning to drive, I had the I didn't know about all my medical history, so I'll keep it short, but I was labelled with just having dyspraxia. But it turned out it's actually cerebral palsy, so it's quite a different ballgame. But anyway, so I tried to sit my manual test twice. Was manage it all, other than the gear pedals, like which you would expect because of the coordination. Like they try to get that all happening at the same time. I ended up crying in both tests on a health start. But anyway,
We've all been there, Hope.
Yeah.
goes to a different instructor who must have been neurodiverse. He was wired like me. Would get out the whiteboard pen and draw it on the window on how to like reverse back into like a bay. Not that I ever did that. One time I did do it. My friend actually parked the car, like I had my feet and she was steering. But anyway, I sat my automatic test, and yes, I got 9 minors, but actually there were minor things and passed it. So sometimes it's literally saying to them, do you know what? Ignore this myth that driving an automatic car is bad, or having adaptations in it's bad. And sometimes that's the answer.
So I think letting people know that yes, of course there are some limits. You know, I'm not saying
like mine, I can't drive now.
Yeah, pushing those limits and encouraging, as you said, rather than just arranging for a taxi or arranging for a bus or that could change somebody's life, and it's probably something maybe that they hadn't even thought of or thought they were capable of, and it's about encouraging that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that we promote very much here is the use of technology as well, Lauren. That can be employed so creatively around providing support to somebody that actually saves, you needing to have somebody there with you all the time.
Environmental control and all that.
Yeah, there's wearable technology that's much more responsive to a person's health needs than a person walking beside you could ever be. So technology is a big thing for us as well.
Yeah. Hope, do you want to maybe ask the ladies question 5?
Question 5. Yep. SDS has been in place for a long time now. Blind eyes, I'm going to zoom it in a bit. Do you think it's working as it I think we can cover those, to be fair, as well as it should be in the way it was meant to.
Do you think so? It has. So the SDS legislation has been around for quite a while now, and so do you think it's working as well as it should, the way it was meant to be? As the legislation tells us it should. What do you think?
I think, obviously I've already mentioned we had the kind of updated review of the statutory guidance, and I think that will take time to feed through, because these things do take time. And we are still in recovery of the pandemic in terms of within local authorities for a variety of different reasons, not the direct immediate stuff that probably people think of in their own day-to-day lives, but as big organisations and lots of other organisations, not just health and social care partnerships, there is still very much a kind of an onset, I suppose, from dealing with the pandemic. And obviously we've got funding restrictions and all of these things that we're all very, very aware of as well. So I think it will take time. What I do think at the moment is that the eyes are back on the ball, if you like, for SDS nationally at the moment. Again, obviously I'd mentioned a wee while ago that I had been working within the SDS team for Social Work Scotland, and that brought me to do a lot of national work around SDS, and seeing firsthand a lot of the improvements that are going on. There's the improvement plan going on at the moment, which you may or may not be aware of, and that's kind of really bringing up an awful lot of work around what isn't working well about SDS and what needs to improve around it. And as I said, we had the the statutory guidance, which is now embedded, and that's the standards of SDS embedded throughout that as well, which is a really good, easy read, and sort of stuff that we do know and most local authorities do know around SDS, but it's just maybe bringing that focus back in and how we can deliver that well. So I do think there's definitely room for improvement. I would be lying if I said there's not. And I think all local authorities have to do it differently, because Scotland is very diverse in terms of how it is geographically, demographically. We've got all these things. And again, that reflects what self-direct support's about, which is that personalisation. So if every local authority was to do it exactly the same way, then that wouldn't really be personal to an individual, but also to a locality, because that's really different as well. If you think about the differences, and I'm going to go extreme here, but from maybe Shetland to Glasgow city centre, you can't possibly have the same delivery of self-direct support in both of those areas, because the resources are different, people are different, and how they live are different, and all of these different things. So these are all things that have to be taken into account. I think obviously, and I don't really want to keep referring back to the pandemic because I feel like it's like the world's biggest excuse for everything now. But I do think that there was a natural break and lots of different things. But there was also a lot of very good learning for self-direct
There
support.
was, I would say, in terms of tech, it forced a lot of councils to be
That's
more
right.
savvy.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and it forced a lot of people into, and I suppose forced is quite a strong word, but it did lead people into a really sort of, they had to be a bit more autonomous about their own support in a lot of cases. They had to think quite differently, and that included social workers, it included lots of different practitioners around health and social care practices as well, which brought about immense learning, and a lot of which you will see within the statutory guidance, the improvement plan that's getting carried out just now nationally as well. So I think there's a lot of good that we will see over the next few years with it. And I think locally, health and social care partnerships are working very, very hard. And I know, again, like Siobhan had said a while ago, we can only really speak about East Renfrewshire because that's where our knowledge is and that's what we know. But we really do seek, and I'm sure a lot of local authorities are the same, but we seek that feedback. We learn from any complaints that come through the door as well. We seek to hear feedback from people because that's how we know if we're doing it well or if we're not doing it well. And we really try and use that information as best we can. We're very resilient to hearing the good and the bad, about all of it, so that we can try and make it better. And I think that is reflected in a lot of our evidence and feedback as well. So we hope to continue to do that well.
Touching on that, so it's maybe a hard question, but if there were things that if there was something that you could improve about SDS, so Hope, I suppose, what would help you? So I think Siobhan, Nolan, we all spoke a wee bit about communication earlier.
So the big issue I have, not just even just with how to put it, like health and social care, like the social work end of it is nobody. I don't have a team. Does that make sense? So obviously I'm quite complex. So because I come under the learning disability bracket, if you like, until they give me an autism diagnosis, unless I can sneak in any other way, I don't know, because that's the bit I'm struggling with at the minute. I'm like, they would probably be best meet my needs because I'm complex, but I don't intellectually fit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're just more complex people. But the problem I have is nobody communicates in my healthcare. So like the urologist doesn't speak to the neurologist, and so the problem I have is then, so a prime example being, I went to the last neurology appointment I had, so everything's now, like they put everything on hold because I've had to go down to Bristol. The problem I have is they don't communicate to each other. So what happens? So the neurologist goes, oh yeah, no, so you're getting, I see that there's an appointment for Botox in your bladder, and me and my mum and dad have been like, it'd be nice if you informed the patient. I didn't, because I ended up with an appointment and they explained it. I was like, no, you're not doing that because it would actually damage my bladder further. But
so some joint up work in Hope that one speaks to the other, and everybody round the table.
Other points I was going to say, just in relation to now, tie in with it. One I've come up against, and it's frustrating, even though I'm registered blind and like equivalent, well, there's not a registered deaf, but it's on my notes, if you know what I mean. So it comes up with like a wee flag. They give me letters in point like 8 or 4 font, and some of them are from the ophthalmologist. So it's simple things. So like whilst I'm learning to read Braille, stuff like that, it's just simple things. I'm like, send it out in 14 font, or do you know what? We've got Apple Health, like downside side. Why can't we have digital? You know what I mean?
Giving you
autonomy over my information.
Information that works for you, and likewise with other people, those would be important. I think that touches nicely then on to we know there's talk of a national care service. What do you guys, do you ladies, Siobhan, Nolan, do you think that's a positive move? Do you think that could be really positive for SDS? What kind of part do you think SDS will play in that? What does it mean for SDS? Obviously, this is hypothetical because none of us know.
I know, and it is difficult to answer, and I think the reason for that is, and I have to be very honest here, is from my perspective, there's not enough information about the National Care Service at the moment for us to comment on how. And I suppose we need to think about where is self-direct support going to sit within that. Within that plan of the National Care Service as well. And of course we have to take it very seriously because there's obviously there is great progress in the National Care Service happening at the moment as well. I think obviously the hope is, and there's certainly noises around the self-direct support legislation being one of the kind of main delivery drivers within the National Care Service, but and we do anticipate challenges with that, I suppose, as well. And you know that there's obviously a lot of human rights based kind of principles within that as well. However, you know, and it's not a great answer, I'm afraid, but I honestly don't have enough information. I don't think the information around the National Care Service has been clear enough at this stage. It hasn't been laid out well enough. And that's from somebody that's kind of actively went to look about it and see what do I think about it. So I can't imagine what that must be like for people that don't have the time or the headspace to go and look and see what more about the National Care Service. So I hope that there's a lot more to come from the National Care Service, that we can hear a bit more about it, more information, more opportunity to have our opinions on it as individuals, as organisations, from whatever angle. But for right now, in terms of self-direct support, I honestly don't have a definite answer at the moment, and that's just based on I haven't seen enough evidence or clear information that would allow me to kind of respond to that properly. And that's, I suppose that's just me individually. That's not me as speaking from the East End HSCP.
I think it's a watch this space type thing, isn't it? And we hope, you know, that it's positive and that SDS is at the centre of all of that. I'm just aware of time, ladies, but just finally, Hope, you're obviously going through this process right now. So in an ideal world, you know, how does SDS, how does it help you? What are you looking to?
So kind of my goals are actually, I was quite independent before, like I went and studied abroad. That kind of went a bit upended, but that wasn't my fault. I didn't get supported, so I had to come home early. So that's another thing that, like, I was actually reading about Erasmus the other day. Obviously, we're not in it anymore because of Brexit, and they seem to be on it. They have almost done like what SDS is, but on your study abroad. I was like, that's clever. So no, mine's is kind of so that, like, so at the minute I'm kind of stuck in the house because as much as I have a bus pass, at the moment I'm not well enough. I can't manage to get on a bus, and it's not that I deputy it that I'm unwilling to. It's the sensory overload that then takes the energy out of me. And then you've got to deal with, like, you come up against you can't have a wheelchair because you've got legs, basically. And you're like, yeah, but I have really bad fatigue and I get dizzy and I have all these other issues. You know what I mean? So it's basically having some form of quality of life back. And at the moment, I believe the way that we're looking at it, because I know that there's a shortage of obviously getting carers and stuff like that, and having somebody that knows my needs. I think our plan at the minute, because luckily my father who doesn't live with me, if you know what I mean. So I have a stepdad who also needs care, but we've not got that far yet. So my dad lives separately from me, so we believe under the rules that we can use him. So the only issue we have, and I don't even know if you guys would be able to answer this, is a power of attorney. So we don't know if that then complicates it, because if you know what I mean, it's my power of attorney, but he doesn't live with me.
Yeah, so, I think unfortunately that does complicate.
That's what I thought.
Things.
I think it nulls it, but I'm just like, but equally though, I would have thought in legislation that would strengthen it, if anything, because then you're watching them even more as to what they're doing. You get me?
I'm not sure about that, Lauren. Actually, I think because I think
you know what I mean.
I think it would only potentially be a complicating factor if you no longer had the capacity to manage your
Which
affairs.
I do at the minute. Yeah.
Right, yes.
So it's obviously in there preventatively. So I've already had one lot of brain surgery.
Yeah.
So it's preventative, if anything.
I think it's definitely worth exploring, Hope. I think it's it's something that shouldn't be taken off the table. I know there's usually the kind of guidance usually is that if you're looking for a PA or somebody to support you, that they shouldn't live with you and they shouldn't have any kind of guardianship or power of attorney. But that's not to say that, you know, that's definite. So it's definitely worth exploring.
The kind of support I'm needing is, it's not I can just about manage my personal care. It's like somebody helping me in and out of the shower, you know what I mean? It's not washing me. And even if it was, it's my dad's, you know what I mean? It's like more comfortable than me having to deal with the issue I've had as well, the way I've been treated by the NHS and other agencies. I have trust issues. So then whenever it's somebody that's in my family, I'm not having to build all that up, you know what I mean? I'm getting the benefit of it. And it's just like simple things. So it's like my hearing. I all the time at the minute, because my hearing aids are not strong enough, I'm still waiting to get audiology again. I will get sensory overload from that because the hydrocephalus and everything else. It's not as straightforward as, well, you're deaf. Where are your hearing aids? I'm like, not that straightforward. So my dad has got bad hearing anyway from being in the Navy. So basically, when he speaks, he kind of shouts anyway. So it's fine, if you know what I mean. It's simple things that if it's somebody that doesn't know you all these accommodations that you've got to think of that just happen naturally. You know?
Yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
sounds as if it's worth
Yeah.
exploring, Hope. And like
Yeah.
you said about the National Care Service, it's a watch this space.
But yeah, no,
see-
definitely some sort of quality of life. Just actually being able to do like activities. So, like when I was at uni, I did building now because, but like I had like trampolines, with simple things like doing like the riding for disabled, and eventually I went to get, and I was getting towards it, getting on the list for my guide dog. So I want to eventually be independent, but it's more my dads, they were more in a kind of paid support role. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you sound like a really, really capable young woman who
I'm
will.
just got a body and a brain that doesn't work, and sometimes as much as my speech is working now, that doesn't work either, and that goes. So then I'm just like, I need somebody to like help make it work, if you know what I mean.
Well, I'm excited to see what the future holds for you, and I really do hope that SDS is able to give you that sort of better quality of life and things that you're looking for. But there always is room for improvement and everything, and I think there are lots and lots of good people, Hope, out there that can help and are fighting the good fight. And the ladies here are sort of everybody's doing their best to try and make this as good as we can for people. But no, I'm excited to see what happens, Hope, in the future. Thank you all so much for joining me. It's been lovely chatting to you and just hearing your experiences, Hope, and you ladies. It's been great. Thank you so much for giving up your time to come and speak to us.
Thank you very much as well, and thanks very much, Hope, for being so honest and sharing your story. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm sorry you've had horrible experiences in the past, and I really hope that you'll have more good, and I'm absolutely sure you will, because you're very, very good at advocating for yourself as well.
To the point that they don't like it.
Well, we wish you all the very, very best
Thank you.
in your future.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. All right, take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks, Hope.
Bye.
Bye-bye.